Hello and welcome to another episode of the Opus Well Style Podcast. My name is Iván Watanabe. I'm here with our founder, my partner, great friend, Russ Carpentieri. Russ, what's going on, man? Good to see you.
Hey, Iván, thanks. Great to be on another formative podcast for our clients and friends.
Yeah, man. It's I'm excited to have you on. It's been a little while, so I know you're joining us from sunny Florida. It is freezing up here in New York right now, and I know you don't miss being up here too much, but I'm glad to have you on.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So today we're for the audience, we're gonna do. Russ and I were having a conversation with one of our clients recently, just to kind of get his feedback on our process overall, our financial planning process. And he's a young private equity executive, and we were asking him kind of his thoughts on our process and what are the things that popped up for him going through it. And you know what he said to us was for young professionals that are starting out with their families and their growing families, things become a little bit more serious or the need for planning becomes a little bit more real. And so, what we thought we would do today is share some of the basic things that we discuss with our clients as they are starting to expand their families. What should they be thinking about? What are the planning steps that they should take, and how to kind of think about money? So, who better than to bring on our partner who's been doing this for 4 decades and taking clients through our process to sort of have this conversation. So, Russ, I'm psyched to have you on.
Yeah, thank you. It's an important topic because what we've learned over the years, having been in the business for quite some time, is when we were able to take clients through our process when they were in their 30s and now they're in their 60s, there is an infinitely different outcome in their world because they had access to information that a lot of people just don't have access to. And even 30 years ago, there wasn't nearly as much, information floating around, misinformation floating around. So I really feel for some of this younger generation trying to figure this out. But we're very steady in our model. We're very steady in our process. And I think what came from that conversation with that guy was, hey, we don't sit around talking about this, from a social standpoint. But what happened with me is when you took me through it, it was all there. I saw it. I got to see it for the first time. And it was an easy decision or things that I know that I had to do because I understood the impact of not doing something
Yeah.
versus doing something.
Yeah. So I think part of our conversation today, again, I think everyone has access to information. So information in and of itself is not necessarily valuable. We're going to share some information, but really like how to go about putting some of those things in place, right? I think actually, and taking action on the information is what's truly valuable, and I think where we kind of fill that gap for clients. So, um, what's the very basic thing that somebody should be evaluating as soon as maybe they find out that they're having children or they've already had one? Where would you start?
Well, I think they have, let's assume they all work for some sort of company and have access to employee benefits, right? So you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, I've got the family en route, or I just had a child. What are the easy check the box? Well, when you have a child, you have a qualifying event. So you can go back into your corporate benefits and say, hey, did I check off the box for the voluntary life insurance? Am I enrolled in my life insurance? Do I have my disability? I have to change my health care from employee spouse to family. These are there's such easy fixes,
Hmm.
because again, you have to protect yourself against unlikely events, but events that could really damage your family if you don't do it. And I will tell you that we have people, that just even super successful people that are in their 40s and say, yeah, I didn't really know that I had that available to me. So we try to bring awareness to say, check your corporate benefits, see what you can elect that you may not have elected.
Yeah.
When you get into, and that's all about, am I putting money in my 401k? Do I have a company match? That's a bigger conversation, but starting early makes a big difference. What we see, the number one uh, gap is a will, and people just don't have wills. And, it's really important to have a will because most people don't realize, like in the state of New York, if you're married and don't have a will, not all of your money is going to your spouse.
Hmm.
It's just by the way it passes. Then if you're married and you have children but you don't have a will, so there's like these three things that could happen, and you're thinking, well, if something happens to me, you know, my wife, husband, partner is going to get X. Not true. May not happen that way. So why not memorialize it? And there's so many options to do that today that are way easier than they were, even 10 years ago, is to memorialize, your intent.
Yeah, and one of the quick solves for folks, there are options. Either contact an estate planning attorney. We can certainly introduce you to some, or you go online to find some. But the other place to start is, to cut down on the costs. Is a lot of companies will have it at a legal benefit,
Right?
right? So they have contracted out sort of reduced fees for wills, healthcare proxy, power of attorney, some of the basic documents for an attorney in their area, and it'll cut down on the fees dramatically by what they've negotiated down. So I would start, if you have a legal benefit within your package, that may be a good place to sort of review first and foremost, right?
Yeah.
Unless you have an existing relationship or you have an advisor that recommends somebody, but that's a pretty easy way to cut down on that cost.
Yeah, and you might even have an EAP in part of your benefit program. And if you
Hmm.
dig deep enough, there's a lot of times there's legal advice and things in there. There's all these buried treasures in these corporate benefits. You just have to dig into it. So if I only had one thing as a new parent, that's immediately where I would go. And then
Maximizing all of those, cost effective insurances, making sure that you understand the plans. That absolutely makes sense.
100%.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious if your thoughts on this. I know you spend a lot of your time in the in the healthcare side of the business. One of my recent recommendations over the last couple of years is to make sure, if you find out that you're pregnant and your part of your birth plan is to have, an epidural, is to make sure that the anesthesia team is approved under your insurance plan.
Yeah.
It's funny because a lot of these anesthesia organizations are privately contracted companies. So you go to X, Y, and Z hospital, and the insurance, the anesthesia team is actually a third party outfit. You might think that your delivery is covered, but the anesthesia is not. So I would make sure that you double down on reviewing that with your insurance provider.
Yeah, we always tell when we're managing the employee benefit practice, we say if in fact you are going in for a delivery, let's do some homework beforehand to make sure that everybody knows what the responsibility is.
Mhm.
And just again, you can avoid like the nightmare of paperwork just by spending a little time.
Yeah.
But there are some protections, something called the No Surprise Act, where they can't just do that to you as easily as they have in the past. But you make a really great point. I mean, sometimes you have clients takes months to undo and
Hmm.
through all the red tape, and they're getting credit notices, or so it's 100% avoidable.
Yeah. In addition to kind of what somebody has going on the corporate benefit side, thoughts on like private insurance, any place that you would start, amount of insurance is always a conversation that seems to pop up. Like, hey, I know I need some additional life insurance, but not sure how much. I mean, what are your experiences and thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think anybody can come to a conclusion without going through some sort of analysis, and you look at it and go, well, I think a million's a good number. You go, why is that a good number? Why isn't it 400,000? Why isn't that 6 million? You got to do the math, right? So, as you know, what we do is we tell people just share with us a couple of things. Let us know what kind of investment structure you have. Let us know, what your cash flow looks like. What's going to happen post baby? Are we going to have a nanny? Do we have to move? What are all these things that could derail you? And
Mhm.
then we're going to actually come up with the the formula to say, look, if you want to do all those things the way you described them, the amount of liquidity that you need to come into the family is X. And then people get it. They go, oh, I didn't think of it that way. And then the
Yeah.
question is, well, what type? That's the easy part. Look, you're for young individuals that don't have, possibly the cash flow because they're saving for the house, they're doing all these things. You buy some relatively inexpensive term insurance, and
Hmm.
it's so cheap relative to the peace of mind, and you can continue that for years without ever being damaged.
Hmm.
And that is better than doing nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things for the audience to consider as well, sort of, that non-working spouse. right? So if the game plan here is to have, one of the spouses not work, they're going to take care of the kids, right? Raise the family. There's still a significant financial value to that role, right? So don't exclude that person in your thought process of, hey, if that non-working spouse were to pass away, well, what would that level of resource need to look like to pay for that economic replacement, right? So, I mean, I think that often gets forgotten about, and we seem to have to bring that up often.
Yeah, and I think the other thing we say is, well, how do you know you're? What do you just go to work? Maybe you want to stay home
Yeah,
and be with your children. And look, what is important to you, and we'll get you there. So it's all of that input really helps kind of create a plan um, that will change over
yeah.
time. But it's a really great point.
So beyond the sort of the protection aspect of the overall plan when we have a family, what are the other things that you're kind of discussing? What are the things that clients should kind of take hold or people should take hold of before or shortly after they have a kid?
Well, I think the biggest thing is where you're going to live.
Hmm.
Right? You're going to stay in the city, you're going to pay your rent, you're going to move in 2 years. What does that look like? How much money do you have currently? Are you saving towards this goal of moving? What does that house look like? What do you think it would be? Now, in today's environment, you read it all over the place. In a lot of cases, not every case, is parents do and grandparents kind of jump in and help and assist at some level. What I would tell you is the biggest mistake you can make is not doing any planning because you think you have a ripcord.
Hmm.
Everybody wants to do their planning, assuming that is just not in the equation. If it happens, great. But if it doesn't happen, I've got to plan appropriately for my family. And that's very, very important. But all those things come into play. As you know, these are all the questions we ask. People are like, all right, tell me, tell me. I say, no, I'm still gathering information.
Yeah,
I'll tell you. And then at the end, they walk away and say, wow, that's like stuff I always thought about here and there, and then it just popped out of my head because I was doing something. But I get it now.
yeah,
Really easy way to understand all the things that can damage you, how to fix them, how to plug the hole at not a cost that would, I always say jokingly to some of our younger clients, I say, look, you live in Manhattan, you can fix all this stuff for like 3 dinners, a year.
yeah,
It's just not, you have to boil it down. And
for
then
sure.
people get it and go, oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when the stakes are higher when you have kids, right? The decision making becomes more important, and it's tough to make decisions without the clarity, right? Including cash flow. So, it becomes even more important as your expenses grow and your income grows and your family grows to have a good understanding of like where your dollars are going, right? Everything is getting more expensive these days. Everybody knows it, right? But, you know, you start to you have a family, you stack on maybe I need an extra bedroom, maybe I need a new home, maybe I need, now I got to fund childcare. Maybe I want to start planning for education. Maybe it's, now I have a family on the health insurance plan instead of, a spouse, right? So all of those increase in expenses have to come from somewhere. And so again, it makes it even more important to track that cash flow. Regardless of income. I don't care if you're making $3 million a year, you make $300,000 a year, you have to track that income, that
Well,
cash flow.
yeah, one of the things we know is most people don't understand their cash flow.
Hmm.
They go, well, I think, and then we send them our cash flow sheet and say, all right, just fill it in, and they go back and go, wow, I didn't realize that. And we say, well, wait a minute, you're spending X, you're telling us, and let's assume you're 10% off. We're going to bump that number up, but you're earning Y. Where's the difference? And they go,
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, 99% of the time, that's how that conversation goes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So having a good understanding of cash flow, having a good understanding of kind of the savings dynamic and um and then trying to figure out kind of what to do with it from there, right?
Yeah, listen, I think that's the easy part is what to do with it, or what should I be thinking about. The challenge, or I always say the heavy lift, the one-time heavy lift is get us that information, let's have a conversation, let's understand what it is that you want to have happen, and then we'll come back and crunch all the numbers. We're not crunching numbers to put you in the S&P 500. We're not crunching numbers to say, oh, you should buy this thing. We're doing pure math around that individual's wish list, and then the products are simple.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
fact they need a product, but we'll
Yeah.
always say go to the cheapest ones first, like click off on the corporate benefits. Oh, we solved part of that problem. Great. It's a band-aid, but now let's talk about what you need to do.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, people go like, wow, I feel pretty relieved that I checked off the box. But as you know, we still have to stay on them and say, hey, where are you with your wills? I heard this 1,000 times. They're in the corner of my desk. I've had the draft. They've been there a year and a half.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, if you understand what happens in the state of New York in particular, if you pass away without a will, you would be incredibly motivated to do something. Jersey, Connecticut as well. Let's just assume that, that's people are listening on that. A lot of it. We have clients all over the country, but it is it makes an income tax look like a joyride.
Yeah. 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 I think the point that we get when we ask for feedback on our process overall is the clarity, right? It's impossible. And the decisions after the clarity are easy. It's getting to a point of clarity, which I think we are uniquely designed to help people accomplish, right? And really, that is our initial job, is to get them the clarity and say, hey, listen, you do A, you do B, you do C, here's what's going to happen. But to get to a place of organization and clarity is, I think, you know, first and foremost, because then like I said, the decisions are easy from there. You got options, right? But
Yeah,
you come to us saying, hey, I want to fund education, but like, you're not, you don't have these basic things in place. The education piece that's going to happen 18 years from now doesn't matter nearly as much as you don't have your wills in place,
right,
you know?
right.
Um, as we kind of wrap up this, and again, for the listening audience, we're going to put a checklist together to make this easy for you. You can take it to your advisor or do the planning on your own, or come contact us, but we'll make it pretty easy for everybody. But as we kind of wrap up the conversation, Russ, any one or two things that you want to make sure the audience kind of takes away?
Well, I think it's what I'd like people to really understand is that there are resources to do something, or at least understand what your options are. I mean, we've created the wealth style process. That's just been a great venue. But if you're having a family, you're living in the city or wherever you're living, cost of living is going up. Don't do nothing and think that it's all going to take care of itself. It's not going to take care of itself. So just do something. And, we always welcome these types of conversations, regardless of the outcome. But we've made it pretty easy for people to understand what their options are. So I would just say, um, again, doing nothing is not a very, very smart long-term strategy.
Yeah, for sure. Great takeaway. And again, we tried to make this episode concise to the point with some action items. Again, the information isn't going to be valuable unless you take action on it. So we hope that you do. To you, the listening audience, thanks for tuning in. Again, click subscribe below to be notified when we have our next episode, and we'll put some content out for everybody to be able to download on your own. And Russ, as always, man, appreciate the wisdom and the conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, Iván. I appreciate it.
All right.